Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs down the third wave of games in the Exit the Game series from publisher Cosmos and designers Inka and Marcus Brand. And like all the other ones that have come before, these little escape room in a boxes are absolutely amazing as they keep on coming up with new and interesting puzzles for you to try to head scratch your way through as you try to get out of whatever room you're stuck in under an hour. And I can say, Jen and I, we played all these back to back. We enjoyed them all. As was introduced in the last wave, there are difficulty assignments. So Mysterious Museum and Sunken Treasure, I think these are the first two that have a 2 out of 5 difficulty. And that actually makes them fairly interesting. These are probably maybe the two most unique ones that have come out so far. Because if you know the Exit the Game series, and if you don't, you can go ahead and hit that eye in the top right corner screen and go watch my original video I did for the first Exit the Games. I actually opened up the box and gave you an idea of how the overall structure works. I'm not going to really do that now because I don't want to spoil any of the story beats or the puzzles that are in these. But the interesting thing about these two is Exit has always had you open the box. You can look at the rules, although you don't need to once you've learned them. And you get your code disc and you get a booklet, a pamphlet that you can leaf through that is full of, pieces of puzzles that you're going to work your way through, and as well, like images of rooms that you're going to travel through looking for clues to figure out how to solve all the puzzles. These two games change that up, and I guess that's how they're defined as being the easiest level, the 2 out of 5 stars, because when you get the booklet and you turn it to the first page, it very clearly says you can't look at the rest of the book. Not until you solve the puzzle or puzzles on this page are you allowed to turn the page and go to the next. And so I guess on the one hand, that makes them a little bit easier to digest because it doesn't just throw this big cavalcade of, oh my gosh, look at all these elements. And I've got to figure out, well, okay, these ones, I probably can't do anything with this right now. This one, oh, I noticed the font on this card matches this. So maybe these two things work together. They get a little bit simpler because they are so hand-holdy and scripted. You will solve this puzzle. And then you'll turn the page. And then you will solve this puzzle. And then you'll turn the page and then you'll solve this puzzle. And then this puzzle. And then you'll turn the page. It takes away, it robs the series some of its trademark freedom to just say, well, right, oh my gosh, I'm in this room. There's 3 or 4 puzzles here. And I've got several cards. And I mean, and there's like all these different pages. Where do we start? What do we do? How do we figure it out? These really lead you by the nose. And yeah, like I said, that probably makes it easier. But as much as, it's funny, in my last Exit the Game summary, when I talked about the last wave, I mentioned, hey, when they introduced difficulty levels, I was kind of bummed that they all were at least 3 stars. Now that I've got some 2 stars, I was so excited to be able to have an easier time. But taking away that freedom of exploration, I don't know. It's interesting. It totally works. And if I hadn't experienced, if these are the first ones I had experienced, which maybe they should be since they're 2 out of 5 stars and all the other ones are tougher. If these are the first ones, I probably wouldn't have missed that freedom. But having experienced in the other ones, these felt a little bit too constricted. Although, that said, the puzzles that are in them and the experiences you go through are still absolutely lovely and fun. I mean, Jen and I are very, very happy we played them. Especially, which one was it? Oh, the Mysterious Museum has probably the single coolest puzzle to date in any Exit the Game, and probably one of the coolest puzzles in any escape room. When Jen and I got to it and we figured out, right, what is this? It was so outside the box. And I don't mean outside the box in the terms of, like leveraging the box like some of these things have done. But I mean, it was just so mind-bending when we finally figured it out and we got to do what needed to be done to solve the puzzle. We were head over heels. Although that said, I worry about it because as cool as it is, there are going to be some groups who sit down to play the Mysterious Museum. And, they'll get to that moment and they'll maybe even figure out what they have to do. And they physically won't be able to do it because of the parameters of the room they play in. So it's a little bit iffy, but if you're lucky and you've got a situation like we had that allowed us to really leverage that final puzzle instead of just saying, oh, well, we know what we have to do. We can't do it. I guess we'll just go on ahead and look the clue and get the answer because that would have been cool if we could have, but we can't because of where we're physically playing the game. So that's kind of interesting. Oh, another issue, by the way, with Mysterious Museum. I don't think I've noticed it in the other ones. There is a very specific puzzle that if you're a colorblind player, you're not going to be able to figure out. Normally, when they mix colors, they also mix symbols, so you can mix it up. But there's one where all the icons are the same, and they're just different colors, and there is a red and there is a green. And if you can't tell the difference between red and green because you're, you're one of the 10% of gamers out there, then you're going to have a really tough time. Now, of course, that's only if you're playing solo. But it's interesting. The other thing about these two that, by hand holding you and letting you only look at one page at a time, only having one puzzle to work on at any given time and knowing exactly what it is and not really having anything else to even think about means, I think, more than ever before, these two, they're really going to be better with a smaller player count. I can't imagine. I mean, it would still work to try and play these with the full, 1 to 4 players like it recommends, but I don't think it's going to be as satisfying because everybody's going to be crowding around, all trying to work on the same puzzle. But everybody can't just look at the same piece of paper because sometimes the details are too small. And so, I mean, you're probably going to have people sitting on the sidelines. And in previous games, okay, I'll look at this other thing and try and figure out, or I'll be, reading some of the background history that, the more expansive, complex games have. Maybe there's some clue we overlooked here. In this one, that's just never the case. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, again, it's very, very cool that the brands are finding new and interesting ways to mix up this core exit game formula. And while it works, I do think it maybe weakens it a little bit. The notion that, it's a one-way trip. You go from page to page to page. You don't get to explore near as much. And that's how they made these easier. Because don't get me wrong, there are still some real head-scratchy puzzles. There are still plenty of times where we had to, in these ones, right, okay, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. I don't really know. Okay, let's look at a clue. We give up. That's always going to happen. Right. But anyway, so that's something to bear in mind. Their first 2-star difficulties, you don't get to explore. It just becomes a set series, and maybe that's going to be an issue for you, maybe not. But then we can talk about Sinister Mansion, which is a 3-star, and Dead Man on the Orient Express, which is a 4-star. And it's interesting. I totally disagree with that. We found Dead Man a lot easier. Sinister Mansion was maybe one of the toughest ones we've played to date, and in all honesty, it might be my least favorite of the entire series. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. Everything it does very well. But this one feels the most like it's just spinning its heels and not really evolving the exit the game formula at all. These ones, hey, they're trying something new and different. And like I said, the Mysterious Museum had by far the coolest puzzle I've ever seen in any of these. Sunken Treasure had some very cool moments as well. Sinister Mansion, I mean, it had new puzzles, it had interesting twists and takes, but overall, when we were done with the experience, I mean, there was nothing particularly memorable that said, oh my gosh, wow, that really made us look at the Exit the Game series in a whole new way. It's fine, and if you're a completionist, you should play it. If you like escape rooms, you should play it. But this one, like I said, it just feels like it's kind of treading water. And now that's in stark contrast to Dead Man on the Orient Express, which is a very interesting, adds new wrinkles to the formula. And it's funny, along with this, I've recently played the 3 most recent Unlock the games, and that series also had a game set on a train. It was set in the Old West instead of the Orient Express. But both of these are murder mysteries, where not only are you trying to solve a series of puzzles, but at the end of the game, once you've made it through all the puzzles and the train pulls into the station, you have to figure out, right, who was the murderer so that you can get, a better score. And it's really interesting too. Both these games did it in radically different ways. Unlock did it by, the big thing that they introduced is, talking to people. There's actual characters you can interact with and use items on and stuff like that. This one, I mean, there's almost no people on this train. I guess they're all being held in some compartment while you're free to search and explore and look for clues. But, what this one really did is, there are a lot of clues. And in fact, all the people who are on the train, they all have alibis. And man, this felt like there was a healthy dollop of Sherlock Holmes consulting detective working its way into a typical escape room. And that was absolutely awesome. We absolutely adored that. We absolutely loved it. And, trying to figure out, right, hey, wait a minute. If both these people say this, one of them can't be telling the truth because these things don't add up. Whose alibi is a lie? And, and looking for clues and, trying to spot inconsistencies. That was awesome. We really enjoyed this quite a bit. So much so I don't get it. I mean, I assume this one is supposedly harder because of that, but we didn't find that hard. We found the regular puzzles to be the really tough stuff in Dead Man on the Orient Express. Whereas Sinister Mansion, just across the board, man, I don't know if we've ever had to look as many clues as we did for this one. just didn't have a great time because, I've talked about this in every other escape room video I've done so far. The more these things make us feel like idiots, the more we think, why are we playing these? And, Sinister Mansion really did that a few times. In part, it's funny, we played all these back to back. Another interesting thing about these two, to make things a lot easier, there were several puzzles where if they were in a harder one, they would just say, oh, look, here's a card, here's a piece of paper, here's some symbols. You just figure it out. Whereas in these ones, there were times when it said, hey, by the way, you might want to practice some origami on this page, i.e., you might want to be folding a bit. And so, these ones just came right out a lot more often and told you, yeah, you're going to have to fold here, or yeah, you're going to have to cut some stuff up here. Whereas in the regular ones, you got to have to make that intuitive leap yourself. So that was actually really interesting because after having played these, we kind of got trained to, right, okay, this is the iconography for when we cut. They actually put the little scissors on the thing. But then when we got over here, they stopped doing that. And that was, I guess that was one of the levels of frustration. We're like, hey, you introduced consistent iconography here, and then you kind of jettison it over here. What's up with that? Now, I don't know. It may sound like, I'm just being a bitter Bob and maybe we didn't enjoy them, but that's not true. We've enjoyed all four of these. Even the one we enjoyed the least, we're still glad we did it. But all I got to say is I am hoping that the next wave of Exit the Games, which I certainly hope to play, I still want to experience them, I hope they try to do a little bit more to evolve the core formula, because comparing these to Unlock and Deckscape, the other two heavy hitters in this escape room in your home genre that has exploded over the last few years, those games are definitely pushing themselves harder and farther and, reinventing and coming up with new ways to skin the cat. Exit is still great, but at this point it feels like maybe they're relying a little bit too much on their core formula, and I'd really like them to come up with something more. Now, they're kind of hamstrung a little bit because, Unlock has an app and you can do anything with that app. They don't have that. Although, speaking of, the app integration for these, which is totally optional. It's basically just a timer with ambient music. It's still working really well. But it's interesting. In this one, in Sunken Treasure, there was a point about halfway through where I noticed, the background ambient sounds and music and stuff have changed to kind of reflect where we are now. I thought that was really cool. But, the developers just had to take a guess. Well, probably by this time they'll be over here. Let's change the background music. I would think it'd be great, as an example, to make that app, still not a requirement at all, but if it's there, and if you're like me and you've downloaded it and you're just using it for background ambient score, there would have been, in this one, Mysterious Museum, it would have been really great when it said, hey, when it says turn to page 12, it also said tap the screen on your smartphone or however you're playing the app so that the game would know, we've gone to another page. Let's change the background ambient noise. That would have been really awesome. Players who don't want to play with smartphones wouldn't have needed, they would have missed out, but it could have really enhanced. Little things like that is kind of what I'm looking for, just to keep pushing the formula forward. Another thing I should say, it's interesting about Exit the Game compared to the other ones I was just mentioning. Man, they are really sticking to their guns. While the other games are kind of branching out and expanding and getting further and further away from completely weird, arbitrary puzzles that exist in a room for no reason. Why are we in this room? For no reason. Why is this puzzle here? Why is there this padlock? Just because, there is actually a through line through a lot of these games that you're just some regular person and there's this crazy mastermind who's following you around and keeps trapping you and trying to torture you with, mind, bending puzzles, kind of like, the Riddler, if the Riddler wasn't going after Batman, but going after us. There is this kind of cool idea that's kind of growing, but still, it's just an excuse to completely thematically divorce the puzzles from the theme. And I love that Unlock and Deckscape are going the opposite direction. They're finding more and more ways to get those puzzles to fit perfectly so they feel like, this would naturally be something I would have to solve if I were in this situation. Exit is sticking old school. It's sticking to the roots of escape rooms, which are just crazy arbitrary collections of puzzles. And, on the one level, I respect that and admire. They're keeping it simple, they're keeping it pure, and because of that, they can just do bonkers, crazy, off-the-wall puzzles that the other ones can't because they're trying to be more grounded. Here, the brand's imagination for puzzles is the only limit to what they can come up with, especially because this is a system where you always have to bring in scissors and you gotta, cut things up and do arts and crafts. I've always loved that here. So I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I'd like these to be more grounded, but I appreciate the fact that they're not, because again, the puzzle that was in here, it just wouldn't make sense if it had to actually thematically fit into the place we were, at the time that we discovered it. So, yeah, long story short, I mean, that's the problem with trying to do these. There's not much I can say other than, yes, they're really good. This one's harder than this one. These are the easiest ones. If you're looking for a really easy time and you don't mind, a very scripted experience, these are the ways to go. If you like the idea of, a murder mystery, this is the one. If you have just really absolutely adored the previous ones the way they were and you don't want to see anything change other than new puzzles, this is the one because it doesn't really change anything about the core formula. But, yeah, we're stuck in a mysterious museum. We're underwater looking for a hidden treasure. We are stuck in a sinister mansion, or we're on a train trying to solve a murder. There's not much more I can say without opening these things up and then everything gets spoiled. So, like I said, this is just my opportunity to just kind of make observations about the overall evolution of the series that, make no mistake, Jen and I have been enjoying every step of the way, even if there's plenty of stuff we don't like in here. In the last time I complained about the boss puzzle syndrome, this is still guilty of that. Hey, let's put our biggest, toughest head scratcher at the end when the players are mentally exhausted and they're least likely to be able to do it and they're most frustrated because they're almost out of time. Let's have them hit a wall. I still don't get that. And there's a few other things like that just kind of bug me. Again, colorblind warning for Mysterious Museum, which is unfortunate because, again, the final puzzle, if you can pull it off, is really great. A lot of cool stuff here. On the whole, Jen and I are still very much enjoying them. And, they are providing, a really, really unique experience that nobody else can touch. But in the future, the one thing they've kind of stepped away from, the kind of free roaming explorer, having multiple things to work on at once. Because actually, while I talked about that here, these two at any given time generally only have one puzzle to work on as well. You might have more stuff to search and look around for, but you still have just one puzzle that must be solved before you get the cards to allow the next puzzle to be solved. It's really weird. Now, with all of these, that first clue card you always get, which just says, yeah, look, this is what you need to have. That clue card might as well go away because you always have what you need to have, because you couldn't even be thinking about this puzzle unless you completed the other puzzle. That's a shame. I hope they get back. Because all the games are becoming more linear. All three, Unlock, Deckscape, and Exit. That's, I think, a bad move to make. Because, a real world escape room is not linear. They throw a ton of stuff at you so a big group of people can divide and conquer. I think that's when they're at their strongest. And the linearity is kind of hurting me a little bit. Not for two players like me and Jen. Hey, if there's only two of us, we can work on one puzzle together. But at higher player counts, that's maybe an issue to be aware of moving forward as well. I think I'm out of stuff to say. And in closing, yeah, we really enjoyed them. I can't wait for more, but I'm really hoping to see that the next wave really starts to push the envelope in the way that some of their competitors have. And that's it, folks. Wave 3, I guess, of Exit the Game. And thanks for watching. Have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.